Hey there, I'm Verity Songon and this is the Confident CEO podcast, the show that takes you behind the scenes of starting and running your small or not so small business. We will cut through the misinformation and bad advice about starting and running a business and give you actionable tips and advice that you can implement to grow, scale and achieve your business goals. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to be joined by the wonderful Jacqui Patton today, who is MD of Inkblock Creative and founder of Greenhouse Jersey. Jacqui, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hey Verity, thanks for having me.
I am going to hand over to you to get you to introduce yourself because you have not one but two amazing businesses, Inkblock Creative and Greenhouse Jersey. So tell us all about them. What is it that you do and what are your amazing businesses about?
Oh, well, thanks so much for that. Yeah, so I'm Jacqui. I'm the managing director of Inkblock Creative, which is a agency that helps startup businesses build really brave brands. And when I say brands, I don't just mean logos and visual identities. It's all about creating messaging and marketing for your business that really makes sense to your audience. So that's what we do over there. And then Greenhouse is kind of my passion project. It's something that came out of speaking to loads of startup businesses, founders, business owners who during Corona were all struggling with the same things. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get everyone together and do maybe a little half-day event? And then that turned into 2 days with speakers flying in from all over the place. And, it grew arms and legs. And now that's something that we've built a really amazing community of business owners online. We run networking events, we run dinners, we have a podcast, we do loads of stuff. And we've got our next big event, which is all around marketing and sales for entrepreneurs, happening in Jersey in October.
So exciting. It seems to be one of those things that started out as an idea and then almost kind of got out of hand.
That is exactly what it was. You look around one day and you think, how's that happened?
I've got my ticket for October. It's going to be brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So what we're going to be talking about today is something which we've actually been talking about it for the past half an hour before we were like, we need to hit record and actually get all of this goodness into this episode. But I love this topic that we're going to be talking about because it's something that I see so much online with entrepreneurs. It's something that you talk to people so much about. And it is this topic of why is no one buying from me? People have spent hours, weeks, months. They've created this ideal product. They've created the perfect online course. They have created whatever it is. They go out, they go to social media, they're making the reels, they're making the stories, they're doing all the things that we are told to do, and it's tumbleweed. There are no sales coming in, or they wanted this huge, 6-figure launch because that's what social media promised them, and they maybe got 1 to 2 sign-ups at absolute most. I'm just going to hand over to you because I know you've got so much goodness and so much knowledge on this topic. I don't even know where to start with the questions, but where would you start with this idea of why is no one buying from me?
Okay, so number one, I think, if somebody comes to me and they ask me that question, Jacqui, why is no one buying from me? My first thing I would say to them is, it's okay, because everything is fixable, right? If you've read Marie Forleo's book, Everything's Figure Outable, or however it is that she phrases that, I can never get it right. It's so true. So if you're in this kind of place where you're thinking, exactly as you said, I wanted 200 people on my online course and I got 1 and it was my nan, I'm not very happy with that, then, everything can be tweaked and changed. And the point of marketing and branding is that it's meant to be a constantly moving feast. It's not that we do one thing and it works and we just repeat the same things over and over again. So I would say, don't worry about it. I think there's lots of things that people struggle with when they're looking for sales. I've actually got a big long list, and that's what we were talking about before we came on today. I think the first thing that we should probably really address is, are you actually selling to people? Because I think very often people think they're selling and what they're doing is putting out the odd Instagram post and then disappearing and wondering why nobody knows what's going on. And we have to really invest a lot of time and energy in sales, and really build those relationships and warm people up before we sell to them. And that requires lots of things, right? It requires really good messaging. It requires a recognizable brand. It requires an audience that's big enough for you to sell to. That's a huge one. And it also requires the confidence to actually go out and say, hey guys, I've got this thing and I'd like you to buy it.
I really, really like that. I want to start and pick up immediately on what you were saying about confidence, because that is one thing that so many people say, I don't like selling, it feels icky, or
Mm,
I don't want to feel like I'm just asking for people's money. So then immediately when you start getting those thoughts in your head, your confidence starts dropping because you're just telling yourself, don't put yourself out like there like that, because you feel icky or
mm,
salesy. Some people kind of refer to like, oh, it just feels like I can't talk, like a sleazy car sales type
yeah.
thing. So what would your advice be around having the confidence to show up and not have it feel icky?
Okay, so there's a couple of things here, and I think that that's such a good point. The first one is you kind of have to get over yourself a little bit,
I love that.
because you're running a business, and as a business owner, that means you have to sell stuff. That's part of the job. And when I started Inkblock Creative, I genuinely, it was the thing I was most scared about, was selling. Because exactly as you said, I thought, oh, I don't want to be that person that's like, hey, buy my stuff, hey, buy my stuff all the time. But you quickly realize that actually the point of a business is that you sell things and you get money for those things. And that's how we pay our mortgages, or, look after our kids, or do whatever we need to do. So I think we need to just get our head around the fact that it's a necessity and we have to learn how to do it. The second thing I think that we feel icky about it because we're trying to emulate people who we see selling. And, I'm a Brit, you're a Brit. Very often the people we see selling are American online, and they have a very specific style and a way of doing it. And, I spend quite a lot of time in the States. You go over, you walk in a shop. Hey, morning, how are you? Do you want help with that? And I'm like, I'm British. I want to be left alone. Please stop talking to me. I'm not in this shop for a conversation.
Do you know what? I had this exact conversation with a friend who lives in California. She is American. I had this exact conversation with her a few weeks ago. And she was like, what is it between American and British people? And I go, well, what do you mean? She goes, we just don't sell in the same way. She
We
goes,
don't.
I'm very happy just turning up on social media and saying, hey, I've got this, come and buy from it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. British people are like, oh, I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, but, and yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it?
Well, it's cultural, like everything, right? If you go to a supermarket on holiday, the way they lay out the aisles is different in every country. And it's because every culture, every nation has a different way of buying. The challenge with social media now is that we see a lot of the Americanized selling style, which works really well in America. That's why they're doing it, because as a culture, they're used to people coming up to you in shops. How are you? Have a nice day, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas we're a bit like, oh, we don't like that. Hello, I'm English. I don't want to be spoken to by a stranger. So then we go online thinking that we've got to be this shiny, and do it all in that really Americanized way. And not only does it feel uncomfortable because it's not culturally what we're used to, for your audience, if they're not American, it can be a massive turn off, because they're like, well, why are you talking to me like that? That's not how I want to be engaged with. So I think when we're worried about feeling icky, we're worried about feeling salesy, you have to really find a way of doing it that is you. So I'm going to give you an example. I love doing video. I do a lot of video marketing. That's because back in the day, I trained to be an actress. I did a lot of camera work. So it's a skill I have. It's something I enjoy doing and I find it easy. So I can crank out, 20 videos in a couple of hours and job's good and for ages. So that works really well for me. And because I enjoy it and because it's something I know I'm good at and because it's something I'm comfortable doing, people can tell. They feel that. It feels nice, right? If you're somebody that absolutely hates it, you can think of nothing worse, and then you're forcing yourself every day to try and sell through video, it just might not be the right thing for you. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday that was like, Jacqui, I've got to get on TikTok. TikTok's where it's at. TikTok's where all the cool kids are. I need to be on TikTok. And I was like, cool, okay, what's stopping you? And she said, well, I'm much more like, I like to chat for like an hour about a topic. I'm not very good at condensing it into 60 seconds. And it's like, well, why are you trying to be on TikTok then? Have you thought about YouTube? Have you thought about podcasting? Like, use the tools and the channels that are going to suit you and your personality, because people will find you. The right people will find you in that way. And then it feels less icky because you're just being yourself.
I think that's so important. And I think as well, the other thing that I really want to pick up on is this idea that you don't need to be everywhere. Like, kudos if you are everywhere, but you don't need to be everywhere. You need to be on the channels that suit you and your personality and your skill set. I think that is so refreshing to hear, because you're right, so often we go on social media and people are like, you need to get on TikTok, you need to get on Instagram, you need to be on Twitter, you need to be, and before you know it, like half of your business day is just repurposing content to go to all these different, to all these different places.
So that's such a good point. So I think something that, when I'm working with business owners and they're asking for advice around, the kind of social media strategy and selling their products on social, I always try and remind them there are lots of really successful businesses that don't have social media followings. Yeah. And I think in 2023, we think that you can't build a business without social media. And a lot of people they think their job as a business owner is running a social media channel. And unless you're a social media manager, that's not your job. So if you sell hair products, your job is to sell hair products and make the best hair products and get those hair products to the people that are buying them from you. Putting out marketing materials about that is something you've got to do, but it shouldn't be what you're doing 95% of the time, because that's not the job. But we kind of get caught up in it. And I think also when you're early on in your business, you're trying to do everything. And social media can also be a really good distraction. It can be something that takes up a lot of time. It's a place where your perfectionism can come out, and we can get to the end of the day and realize we spent all day lost in a Canva hole, right? Rather than, maybe getting in your DMs and having a couple of conversations and actually talking to people who might want to buy it, because that's harder to do because it's a bit uncomfortable. So you don't have to be everywhere, but you do have to be where your ideal target customer are. So, one of the things I mentioned at the beginning here when we're talking about, why is no one buying from me? Are you selling to the right people? Is really, really important. Have you built a brand that resonates with the person that's going to buy what you're buying? Another example, I worked with a business a couple of years ago. They're a consultant. Their target customer was big corporates. And they're a well-being consultancy, really cool business, really, really cool lady running it, incredibly, incredibly qualified, so good at what she did. And she just wasn't getting any traction. And her brand and the way she was talking to people exactly like her, a young female. But the people that were actually the decision makers that were buying for her were middle-aged men. So they just weren't resonating with the brand she'd created. Now, in that scenario, you've got two options, right? Either you pivot the audience you're going to work with, or you pivot the brand to speak to the audience that you're aiming for. So we have to make sure that we're going where they are and we're talking to them in a way that they can get behind. And it's why very often a lot of us end up working with people that are similar to us. And it's because like attracts like, right? We kind of build communities around ourselves of people who think similarly to us. So, really thinking about that and building the right audience is really important.
100%. I think, there's two things I want to pick up on what you were saying there. The first one about pivoting, because so often I have conversations with people and they're like, but that's not what my business does. That's not what I set up. And it's that idea that you can pivot. You are in the driver's seat of your own business. My business does not look the same as it did a year ago. It doesn't look the same as it did 6 months ago because, well, first of all, I'm a money generator. So, that doesn't really help. I've always got ideas going on. But it's because it's evolving and you're looking at those audiences and thinking, well, what am I putting out? Does this still align with me? Does it align with my brand? Is it what my audience wants? And the other thing I want to pick up on what you were saying there is about thinking where your target audience is. And I had a conversation with somebody recently and they were quite surprised when I said, I've got a bigger following on Instagram and I get more engagement on Instagram, but I tend to make my sales through LinkedIn. And that has been incredibly interesting for me, but it's also made me kind of what you were saying, think about that marketing and that, how am I getting more engagement on Instagram than I am on LinkedIn? But how am I getting more sales on LinkedIn than I am on Instagram? And it's thinking about, well, where are those two marrying up and what do I need to focus on and what do I need to potentially amend to if I want to see that shift? And I think that's really important as well for people selling online, is really drilling down into those analytics and thinking, well, where is the engagement coming from and how far is that then working on my marketing funnel and all those types of things as well.
Right. I'm going to throw some top tips out because you said to me at the beginning of this podcast before we hit record, you want tangible things that people can take away. But before you do that, I just want to remind everyone that's listening, If you are starting a business, you start it with your idea of what a business should be. None of us have done this before. Unless you're a serial entrepreneur, when you start your first business, you don't have a bloody clue what you're doing. None of us do. When I started Inkblot, I thought it was going to be a full service marketing agency for corporate businesses, because I used to be the head of communications for an international bank. I was used to dealing with big boards of global organizations. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And now I work with startups. Massively different, because I've changed. I'm a different person than I was when I started the business. So don't be afraid to kind of check in with yourself. Building businesses is a massive mental roller coaster, and it's taught me more about myself than it's taught me about anything else. So that's a cool thing. But yeah, thinking about the stats. So if you're worried, why is nobody buying from me? I want you to go and look, first of all, at what you are doing and how that's performing. What we often do is we throw stuff out into ether, and then we do a runner, and then we think, oh, I don't know why that didn't work. And we're not actually looking at the data. The joy of online and the digital world is that there is a lot of data out there for us. So I would like everybody, when this podcast is finished, to go into their Instagram insights or their Facebook analytics or LinkedIn or wherever you go, email marketing platform, whatever your main channel is. And I want you to look at your best performing content. And I want you to look at your best performing content this month, last month, and the month before. What is it about those things that are similar? Those 3 best performing pieces of content, what are the things that make them similar? Why do you think people are engaging with them? Look at it with a critical eye as if it was somebody else's stuff, right? Why do you think people have engaged with that? Then I want you to look at your worst performing content, 1 from each month, and think about, why do you think that flopped? Why do you think people didn't engage with it? Why do you think they're not getting it? And then do more of the stuff that's working and do less of the stuff that isn't. And what we often do is we go, oh, well, I really liked that post, so I'm going to just keep doing it. We've all been there. We've all done stuff because we like it, but we're not selling to us. We're selling to other people. And your customer has to be the hero, right? You have to make it about them. You have to make the marketing work for them. You have to be talking to them about things that they are interested in, not just about yourself. Another thing, a little test, I'd love everybody to go to their main landing page. So whether that's their homepage on their website or whether it's a sales page they're using. And I want you to look at the first thing that comes up when it loads. Is it about you or is it about them? Does it say something like, we have 10 years experience doing this thing? Does it say something like, we are amazing at XYZ? Boring, I'm out. As a customer, I don't care. I don't care about you. I care about what you can do for me. So if you can tell them straight away what you can do for them, you're onto a winner. The amount of websites I land on where it says, some strapline that makes no sense, like building the future. And you're like, the future of what, for who, with what? I don't know what that means. I'm out, right? We have short attention spans. So really make sure they're the hero and really dial in to the marketing activity that you know is working, and be critical and think about why it's working.
I love that so much. That is some fantastic actionable tips. And you're right, because that is one of the premise of this podcast is, what can people go away and do today or this week? And there is gold in there, absolute gold. So I would actually encourage anyone who's listening to this, as long as you're not driving or something, to actually go back over those couple of minutes, listen to those tips, and really write them down, because I think those things are really, really going to help drive potential sales and your marketing forward.
We also do this thing, right, is I do it all the time. I'm a podcast addict. I listen to audiobooks constantly. And that can feel really overwhelming. What I've just said to you, you can be like, oh my goodness, I don't have 3 days to sit and trawl through analytics. And you don't need it. That's all a load of rubbish, right? You can go and look at your Instagram analytics in 5 minutes. You can whiz through the posts and you can go, yeah, that worked because actually I was being really vulnerable and cool and showing people a bit of my real life there. That didn't work because I don't even know what I was saying in that post. That was obviously a bad day. That's when I posted outside the supermarket in a rush, right? You can figure that out very quickly. And then you need to just take the action. So a really great way to do that is just pop it in your calendar. Every week, I have it in my calendar on a Friday afternoon at 2 p.m, check analytics. And it's a little half an hour block. And it just reminds me, Jacqui, today you just got to go and have a look. So that next week, because Friday afternoon is when I create content, I don't then go and create a load of stuff that no one's interested in. So don't feel overwhelmed by it. This is not about doing everything perfectly or getting it all amazing. You know, something like your website homepage, you might go on your website after hearing that and think, oh my goodness, my entire website talks about me and not about them. Okay, that's fine. So take half an hour and do one page and adjust it. You don't have to do the whole thing. It doesn't have to be perfect and shiny and great. Don't put it off. But if you can make incremental, little changes, that's going to really help.
Yeah, that's so key. And I think you're right that everybody can find even just 20 minutes to say, I'm going to work on this paragraph of my website today, or I'm going to really nail down the tagline, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, just that 20 minutes that we would be spending watching reels. Let's not watch the reel. Let's not put ourselves in that pit of thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't learned that dance. I need to get on this trend. I need all these things, and actually spend that 20 minutes instead just on the other side of Instagram and looking at those analytics as well.
So I do an email every Friday that goes out that kind of shares tips, helpful things for people building businesses. And every week I do like a little roundup or like some things I've learned from the week. And last week I had a revelation that if I watched one less episode of NCIS a night, how much better would my business be? I'm obsessed with bad American cop shows.
I love that.
So that is my and what was funny is lots of people replied to that and were like, I'm guilty of this. I like one less episode of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills or whatever. So we've got the time. I hate this hustle culture thing of like, everyone's got the same 24 hours in the day. We don't. Some people have a lot more going on than others, and that's fine. But you have to think about doing the things that are going to move the needle the most and prioritizing them. And we spend a lot of time creating marketing content. So if you can take 20 minutes out of the time you'd spend creating it and just do a bit of a review, that's going to really help you.
Yeah, I think that's so actionable. And so, like you said, it's those needle moving tasks that we need to be focusing on, as opposed to just production for the sake of production's sake almost. There's something else I want to ask you about, which I think we've kind of already picked up a little bit, but this discussion around features versus benefits when we're selling online. And I was having a little bit of a thought process about this morning because, kind of prepping myself to come on to have this conversation. And I was thinking, well, what examples can I think of when I was sold the benefits of something over the features? And the immediate thing that I thought of was when I went to uni and I did my nursing degree. Now, for anybody who hasn't done a nursing degree, you have to do a certain amount of practice hours, a certain amount of theory hours, X amount of maths tests that you have to get 100% in, and essays and what have you. And I was reflecting on this and I thought, if I had been marketed my nursing degree of you have to do 2,500 hours of practice and 2,500 hours of this, and we will provide you with maths tests and we will provide you with a uniform, and the list goes on, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this sounds awful.
You wouldn't have gone.
I wouldn't. Instead, I was pitched of you can do these placements in these different areas, and we'll organise for you to do these different types of optional modules and all the rest of it, because this is how your career could benefit and how you can kickstart your nursing career. So I'm going to hand this over to you now, because I've kind of, that's my example that I can think of. But obviously, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, well, I'm not selling a university degree, Verity. I'm selling, maybe a product that I've made or an online course. So how can people really dig down and make sure that they're selling the benefits as opposed to here's a workbook with 200 pages and a couple of activities at the end?
So I think the first thing is to understand why that's important. So we've talked a little bit about this. Your customer doesn't really. Some people do, right? If some people will read every page of your website. They'll go into the FAQs on a landing page. They'll have 5 conversations with you on Instagram DMs. They'll want to have a call before they buy. That's how some people are. Some people are like me. I have a business coach. I've worked with her for 2 years. I watched 2 of her Instagram stories, had 1 conversation with her in the DMs, and then she was my business coach. Because I'm very much like, yeah, I like you. That's cool. I'm going to do it. People buy in different ways. We have different buying behaviors. So you have to account for that. You have to make sure that you're giving information so that different people can find what they need. However, the reason that it's important to sell the benefits over the features is if I'd have come on, when I did my intro earlier and I said, I'm Jacqui, and I help startup businesses get brands that really talk to their audience and make their marketing make sense for them, because that's the problem they have. They're struggling to talk to their audience, right? That's the benefit they're going to get. If you work with me, at the end of working with me, it's going to just make a lot more sense for you, your marketing and your brand. If I'd have said, I'm Jacqui, and what I do is we go away and we do this strategy session and then we do consulting. No one cares. It's not what we need. If, your university example, what you were actually sold is at the end of this course, you will be a nurse. You wanted to be a nurse. You do this course. At the end, you're a nurse. The fact that you have to do all this stuff is incidental to the fact that you want to be a nurse. So we have to get past the gumph that we're interested in, because we've spent loads of time figuring it all out, right?
And creating it as well.
Yeah, so we have to get past that. So one of the ways that you can do that is really think about your value proposition. So what is a value proposition? A value proposition is split into 5 key areas, and it helps you understand the value that you provide to customers so that you can explain it really easily. The first part of that is getting to understand your market. So getting to know your audience. And we're going to have a chat about that in this podcast. I know we are. So I'm going to leave that for now. We'll come back to getting to know the people you're selling to in a minute. The second part of that is understanding what you actually sell. So this is your offer. What is it you're actually selling? Now, this is not a list of features. This is, I'm selling a university course that at the end of it, you become a nurse. I'm selling consultancy services where at the end of it, your marketing is easier. I'm selling a journal for CEOs who want to have a better work-life balance and know what the hell's going on in their day, right? What is it you sell? You have to know what it is. The next thing is, what are the benefits of that offer? What does the customer get from that? How is that going to be good for them? And that's, I'll get to be a nurse. I'll get to work in hospitals. I'll get to work with people I like. For my example, it's, I'll have a brand that actually makes sense. My audience will engage with me. I'll be able to sell more easily. We'll be able to get the clients we want. That's the benefits, right? People, you really have to understand what they are and think about it from your audience's point of view. The next area is differentiation. How are you better or different than your competition? This is a bit icky. It can be a hard one to get our heads around. I get 2 pushbacks to this. One is that people say, oh, nobody's a competitor. I'm doing something that's never been done before. That's a complete load of tosh. Everybody has a competitor, every single person. So I want you to really think about that. What could they be spending their money on that isn't you? And then figure out how you're better or different. And it can feel like we're gloating or ego or whatever, but we have to know, because we have to be able to explain the differentiation. Now, we don't use that to say, don't buy from Verity, buy from me, because that's just awful and that's not the kind of people we are. But what we do use it to say is, you might be used to XYZ. Well, actually, we do ABC. And that's just useful for us to have that in our hands. So understand who your market are. We're going to talk about your audience a little bit more. Understand what you're actually selling. What is it they get when they give you the money? What is that transaction? Understand the benefits of what you sell to them. Understand how you're different. And then that all adds up to what the value is for the customer. And the value is cost minus benefit. So if it's something costs me £100, but I'm going to get all this stuff and it's going to help me in all these ways. So for example, a university degree, if you're going to spend 10 grand, I'm plucking this number out of thin air. I have no idea how much it costs to become a nurse. But if you're going to spend 10 grand, at the end of it, you're going to be a nurse and that's a lifelong dream and what you want to do, then the benefits outweigh the cost. If that was £1 million and you're not going to get paid £1 million a year when you're a nurse, the cost doesn't outweigh the benefits, and then you're not going to buy it. So that's how we have to understand the value. So I think if we can, again, this is something that you can do half an hour, cup of tea, glass of wine, depending on your vibe, in your PJs, on the sofa, with a notepad. Just go through those 5 areas and have a little think about it. That will clarify your messaging so much, and it will make it so much easier to talk to your customers about what it is that you're actually selling.
And I guess it takes away the kind of ickiness as well, because you're not really, I kind of see it as almost a mindset shift of, you're not really selling when you're talking about the benefits, because what you're doing is instead advising how you can help somebody almost. Yeah. And so it's not like, give me X amount of money, I'm going to give you this ebook, for example, because it's got X amount of pages and all these activities. But you're actually saying, I'm going to help you with this. And then, like you said, you saw somebody on Instagram stories twice. So I'm guessing within those 2 stories, you had already clocked exactly how they were going to be able to help you. So then when you started having that conversation, straight away, you're going into that conversation going, I know how you can help me. I know how your coaching service can get me from A to B. But she wasn't going in on those Instagram stories, I'm guessing, saying, Jacqui, I'm going to spend 2 hours with you a week, or I'm going to do X amount of Zoom calls with you. It's going to cost you this much. She was selling you that transformation.
Yeah, so she was basically saying, I work with ambitious women, and I'm like, check, I'm ambitious. She's like, I'm no BS. I'm going to tell you how it is. I was like, tick, I'm like that. I need that. I need someone to tell me how it is. Right? Then she's like, and we're going to have a real structure around how I support you. I need structure. I'm not good at that. Right? Tick. I need someone that can give me structure. So she was basically telling me all the things that I knew I needed. And then I'm happy to pay for it. And the reality is, right, some people aren't going to want to buy from you. I'm sure some people watch my Instagram stories when I'm in a kaftan or a hoodie on the sofa with no makeup on, with a glass of wine, moaning about running a business, and think, God, she's a misery. I don't want to work with her. I want to work with someone all polished and nice that's going to turn up in a suit. And that's fine. There are people that are like that they would fit with and that will be great for them. That's not who I am. But the people, I've won some insane clients. I went to a networking event on Thursday, and this man that I've never met before had asked to be sat next to me because he follows me on Instagram. And when people say that to me, I like die a little bit inside because I am a bit unfiltered on there. And I forget that they might be a client and they want to work with us and redo their brand and things. And that's really exciting. But that's because he's got to know me and he feels like, oh, we'd get along. Because in business, we all know this, people buy from people. And we spend a lot of time trying to be somebody else in the hope that someone will buy from us. And the reality is we're all a bit weird. We're all a bit strange. We've all got our weird little hang-ups. There is somebody out there for everyone. Just go on YouTube and look at the weird video. Like if you're into like catfish angling, there are like 50,000 people on YouTube that are also into that, right? There are people for everyone out there. So you just need to be able to be a little bit vulnerable. And actually, here's a tip, an actionable tip. When we're buying, we have to get to know, like, and trust someone before we're going to buy from them. And what I see, especially in the digital world, somebody will come to me and they'll say, Jacqui, I built this amazing online course. I'm the best at what I do. I know what I've built is so good. It's so good. I've got 150 Instagram followers. I've told them about it. I've talked about it. And I got one person buy it. What am I doing wrong? Why is nobody buying this thing from me? There's two reasons there. Number one is you don't have a big enough audience for the expectations that you have. And number two is you've not warmed them up enough. So let's talk about number one. About 1 to 2% is the online conversion for online sales. So if you've got 100 people, 1% to maybe 2% are going to buy from you if the conditions are right. So if you've got 150 Instagram followers or 200, say you've got 1,000 Instagram followers and you want 50 people to join your course, that's more than 1 to 2%. So we've got to start before we build things. And this is the other thing when we're building a business, people that build businesses are creative. They want to create, they want to make. You want to do things and you've got all these ideas. So we want to create, but we don't want to do the boring stuff. And often building that audience that takes time and months and months and months, and you've got to put the work in. And we think, but I've got this thing now and I want to sell it now. And sometimes the answer is hold on to that. It's not going anywhere. Spend the time building that audience so that when you launch it, they're ready for it and they're actually going to buy it. And you've got enough people so that you can get the benefit of it. But often what we do is we launch things thinking, oh, I've got 100 people, I only need 10, that'll be easy. But that's not the reality of conversion. So I think that's a really important thing to think about, is how many people are in my audience and how many people do I need to convert. Now, there will be a couple of you that are thinking, oh my God, my entire business model has just gone out the window now she said that, because I need to get 50 people on this course because I'm selling it for a tenner and I need 500 quid a month and I need to do that every month. And I'm so bad at maths, by the way, so when I just said that I just thought, is that the number? But it is the number.
It is.
But the reality is then maybe that's not the right time in your business to be doing it. And maybe rather than trying to get loads of people through something at a low cost, maybe you need to get less people through at a high cost because that's going to work for you right now. So you just need to think about the numbers of it, because otherwise what happens is we launch things and we think we're bad at what we do. We think that our course is rubbish or our product's rubbish or people just don't like us, and then we give up, when in reality it's just because we've not given it enough time and we've not built that audience. So building your audience is a really, really, really important part of why nobody's buying from you, is because there's not enough people seeing it.
And I guess it's the right audience as well, isn't it? Because I'm sure you've seen this as well, that you go on Facebook groups and people are, and there's nothing wrong with this, but people are saying, it's Follow Me Friday, or it's, Instagram Wednesday or whatever. And people shovel their links in. You get, I don't know, maybe 50 people follow you. You're like, yeah, this is brilliant. But have they followed you because they're interested in your service or your product? Or have they followed you just because you're going to follow them back? And then you're just boosting your numbers for the sake of boosting it. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I would be very interested to hear them.
Love it. So social media is called social media for a reason, right? I would rather have 500 people following me on Instagram that absolutely bloody love what I do, that think what I do is what they need, that are engaged, that are fun, that are interesting, that if I threw a party, they'd come to it, then have 50,000 people and 2 of them be interested in what I'm doing, right? Because it's not useful for me as a business. So I think we get caught up in metrics that don't make sense. To give you a bit of insight, if you are running marketing campaigns and you're looking for an influencer to promote your product, the more followers someone has, the less engagement they have. That's just the reality, right? So if somebody's got 100,000 followers on Instagram or 1 million followers on Instagram, they're going to get a lot less engagement, obviously proportionately, than somebody who's got a much smaller following, because you can build an actual relationship with those people. You can chat to them, you can message them, you can have in-jokes, you can let them get to know you properly and they feel like they're part of it. So I would always be going for quality over quantity. But if you're looking to sell at scale, you do need to build an audience. Now, that audience doesn't have to just be Instagram followers. It could be email subscribers. There's lots of ways. It could be podcast listeners. There's lots and lots of ways to build an audience. But they have to know, like, and trust you before they buy. There's lots of stats around this. People have to engage with you 7 times or in 4 different locations before they buy. And I don't know if any of that's true. You hear it a lot. But I know for me, definitely, this concept of know, like, and trust is an oldie but a goodie. So the idea behind that is that they know you. So they know what you do. They understand you. They understand the premise of what it is you sell and why you're there, right? And we're not very good at that. Go and look at your Instagram bio and check. Does it say what you're actually there for, what people get from you? And if it doesn't, make sure it does, right? That's a really good tip. The next thing is they have to like you. And they can't like you if all you do is sell to them. If all you do is stand up and go, hey, I'm Jacqui, I'm selling this thing. Would you like to buy this thing? They're not going to get to like you because they don't know anything about your life. So this is where we have to go a bit behind the scenes. We have to show them what's going on. We have to show them, us in our kaftan after we've had a bad day, or we have to show them that, oh, I've had to stop this today because the kids have lost the plot and now I've not got time for it, right? Because that's how they figure out if you're like them and if you're somebody that they'd want to spend time with and if they want to invest in you. And then the trust comes from all of this building up over time. And that's about credibility and about showing what you can do. Social proof is really, really important. When you're starting a business, social proof is really hard because you've not got any. It's really hard to say, like, hi, I've got this course and it's amazing, but nobody's ever been on it. And people are like, oh, well, how do I know it's amazing? So you have to get creative. Could you do a beta? Could you put a couple of people through it for a $5 so that you can get a load of testimonials and get feedback and tell them that you're only getting it for a $5 because I'm going to milk you for all your worth for your social proof? Because then people can see, oh, that lady like me, she did it and she thought it was worthwhile. So don't underestimate that know, like, and trust. It's super, super helpful.
I think that is really, really helpful. I think if anyone's listening to this and they haven't already got our notebook or the notes app on their phone, I think that they need to start the episode again with a notebook and the notes book, the notes app on their phone, however is best for you to write notes, because I think that leads us really nicely into the next point that we want to talk about getting to know your audience. How do you get to know your audience when everybody is, well, behind their phone, I suppose, or behind a computer screen?
We are so lucky because social media means we can just message people we've never met. Like you and I. The reason we met is because we connected on Instagram and then one of us DM'd and said, do you want to go for a coffee? And then we've been following each other. And then I started listening to a podcast. And then you were like, oh, do you want to come on the podcast? Right? I probably would have never met you if it wasn't for social media. So we have it at our fingertips. But this goes back to confidence. As an adult, It's really weird and icky to make friends, right?
It is,
Have you
isn't
ever been
it?
at a party and you meet someone and you think, oh my goodness, they're so cool. I'd love to hang out with them. And if you were a kid, you'd be like, hey, do you want to be my friend and go on a play date? And as an adult, you're like, so it was great meeting you. And then you just like never get in touch with them again because you don't want to be the person that asks, right?
It's that British thing again. You don't
It
want to
is.
bother people, isn't it?
It's that thing. But it's the same in business. You have to be the one that reaches out and goes, hey, I've seen that you've liked my social posts. Thanks so much for that. That's really cool. What do you do? And not because you're selling. It's not about getting in the DMs and being like, oh, hi, Verity. I've noticed your podcast. I was wondering if I could, I've seen your brand. Like, nobody engages with that.
I hate those messages, by the way.
Of course, nobody
Just,
engages. If
just
I
as
get
I'm
one
throwing it
more,
out there.
if I get one more that says, you too can be a top 500 entrepreneur.
Oh, I love
Or
those.
would you like to model our jewelry? No,
You
but
only
thank
need to
you
pay us
anyway.
$30 for the privilege. Wait, what?
Yeah, I love it. Just like block and delete.
Yeah.
But I think that this is another thing that we worry we've got to do, that we're going to get into a DM and we're going to have to be like, hi, I'm Jacqui. I sell this thing. Would you like to buy this thing? And nobody's going to respond to that. They're going to block you. So I would always think about, if you want to get to know your audience, get to know them. They're there. Ask them questions. Use your stories to be like, what are you doing today? What's going on? What do you like? I asked on Greenhouse's Instagram the other day, do you have your phone in light mode or dark mode? Because actually that affects what our posts look like when they show up. And that gives me a little bit of info about them. What else might we want to know about them? What podcasts do they listen to? What books do they read? What YouTube channels do they follow? Where do they get support from? Who's their favorite influencer? What's their favorite holiday destination? What kind of restaurants do they like to eat in? Now, people will be thinking, why do I need to know this? I sell trainers, Jacqui. I don't care what books they read. Yeah, but it tells you something about them. So if all of them are telling you that their favorite restaurants to eat at is some bougie health food place where like it's kale smoothies, then guess what I'm thinking about running a campaign is going down to my local bougie health food place and giving everyone a pair of trainers and getting them to share it, because chances are people like the trainers will let you've got to start finding the connections of what are they into and how can you play on that and build on that. Also, sometimes when we do this, we realize that they're not the right people. Maybe we've built an audience that isn't right for the business we want. So, for example, when I built a business that was really corporate geared, and then I suddenly realized, hold on a minute, everyone that's engaging with me and following me and is excited about what I'm doing is a startup. So why am I trying to sell to corporates? So we've got to get our heads around those people, and we can use social to do that.
Absolutely. And it's remembering as well, I suppose, that it's not a bad thing if a different audience finds us.
It's amazing.
Because it is absolutely amazing. Because again, sometimes when I talk to people, they're like, but I don't, I'm trying to work with these people, but these people are finding me. And it goes back to what we said at the beginning of the episode. And it's so pivot. There's no rule book, there's no business police that is going to come down to you and say, hey, as long as your business license and your business insurance obviously tallies, those are important things. I did that myself when I started branching out and doing different things. I suddenly had a brain thought, and I was like, oh, I need to actually like change my business license for that. So make sure your legalities are in place. But aside from that, there's nothing wrong with pivoting with your audience. If you're attracting a different audience, it's like you said, which posts are you putting out there? What is it that you're doing that is attracting that audience? And if you're really dead set against it, then maybe
you need to adjust.
Exactly. But if you're happy to go in that direction, like you said, why not? It could be an avenue that you literally never thought of and ends up being really, really enjoyment. That makes no sense. Joyful for you.
So I think if we take my corporate example, so when I realized that actually it was startup founders and business owners that were engaging with me, it made me think, well, hold on a minute. Why am I wanting to work with corporates? And I wanted to work with corporates because that's what I knew. That's the world I'd come from. I'd worked with big brands before, big businesses. And my assumption was that that's where it would go. It turns out that actually I love working. These were the people that were lighting me up when I was working with them. So my pivot made sense to go towards the audience that was already there. Now, What if I'd have realized that and I'd have thought, no, I don't want to work with, those aren't the kind of people I want to work with at all. I don't enjoy it. I love working with corporates. Well, that's fine too. What I would have had to have done at that point is think about, okay, Jacqui, you're spending a lot of time on Instagram. Do you maybe need to ramp up LinkedIn because that's where the corporates are? Do you need to adjust your messaging? Do you need to sit down and get that value proposition we've talked about really clear so it speaks to the right people? Do you need to start going to different kinds of events to meet different kinds of people? Do you need to adjust your audience, build a different one in a different space? So the pivot can happen both ways, but you have to be conscientious of it and you have to be strategic about it. Again, that's not something that I sat down for 6 weeks and mulled out on an Excel spreadsheet. That was just, right, what am I doing? I need to get my head together. And it was mainly conversations with my business coach and some friends over a bottle of wine thinking, what the hell is going on here?
Not when the best conversations happen, though.
Always. I do think as well that we worry about changing things because we worry about what people will think about us. Lots of people that run businesses, if you're like me, I don't come from a family where that's a thing. None of my friends are, well, they are now entrepreneurs because I've met so many people through business, but my close oldest friends are teachers and medical professionals, and they're not people that do this kind of stuff. And if I'd have worried about what are they going to think, I would never have done it. And actually, now I've done it, they're all really excited for me. And the people that aren't, you just got to be like, see you later, off we go. Because you only really get one shot at this, this life. You've got to make the most of it. And if we're worrying about what Jane from high school thinks about us all the time, we're never going to do anything.
And
so
Jane
that's another thing.
Probably doesn't care anyway. You're worrying what she's thinking.
She's not
thinking. Actually, does she even follow you on?
Precisely. And if she does and she doesn't like it, then that's up to her, right? We have to let go of those feelings. And I think that's another reason that we don't actually sell. So, I'm conscious that we've not really talked about how to sell. And one of those things that, why is nobody buying from me? It's probably because you're not actually selling. You're not asking for what you want. And you need to get better at that. My first year in business was 2020.
Oh, wow. What a year.
What a year. And I went from building quite a decent client base to having 0 clients, bar one teeny weeny one at the end of 2020. And I was sat in my house with no money, having quit a very big, well-paid corporate job, putting my groceries on my Amex because I was in the proverbial thinking, how am I going to pay my mortgage? It was dire straits. And I thought, well, I'm going to start selling stuff, aren't I? And it was so uncomfortable for me. And I made a list. I still have it somewhere. I made a whiteboard with 1 to 50 written on it. And every single week I contacted 50 people I didn't know and said, hey, I'm Jacqui. I'd love to tell you about what I do. About 48 of them ignored me. One would tell me where to go and one might book a coffee. But I have built a 6-figure revenue business from my kitchen table during a pandemic doing that. I'm not saying that that's the way you have to sell, but that worked for me in the first year because I just put myself out there. Now, I don't ever have to do that. I just go to nice events and people know what we do and I have chats and I've got consistent marketing and it works well and it's nice. And when I'm selling, it's joyful and lovely. But that was an incredible learning curve for me because it taught me how to have sales conversations. So if anybody, I think when you're selling a product, it's really about making sure that your messaging is on point and that value proposition is clear. And if you can do that, people, and you've got the right audience, so you've built a big enough audience, people will buy. When you're selling a service, you have to get good at having a sales conversation. So I use a four-step sales conversation when I'm selling a service. I'm going to share what it is. It's super useful. Again, this is a notepad moment. When we sell, we often go into the conversation and we go, hi, Verity, let me tell you everything about myself. And you're like, oh, goodness, I don't care. That's not what I want. And then we try and sell something without figuring out if it's what they need. So rather than selling what you think they need, people love to talk about themselves. So you want to get them telling you everything so that then you can figure out, have I got what they need? And if I do, how can I position it now so that it makes sense for them? So, for example, I would always go into a sales call and after the intros and the niceties or whatever, I always will ask, okay, so what I would love to know off the bat is what results are you looking for? So number 1 is results. And they'll say to me, well, Jacqui, what we'd really love is we'd love loads of engaged people on our Instagram. And, we'd love to be able to talk really confidently about what we do. And we'd love our website to make a lot more sense. We don't think it works for us. And we'd love to have really consistent marketing, right? So they're telling me what the result is. The next thing is, okay, cool. So what's the reality of your business right now? So where are you today? What's the reality? And they'll go, oh, well, our website doesn't make sense. And we've only got 5 Instagram followers and we don't have a clue really how to have a conversation about it. So now I know what they're aiming for and where they currently are. This is gold because I now know what's going on, right? Next thing I ask is, okay, so what's stopping you? What's stopping you getting from where you are now to where you want to be? What are the roadblocks? These are all R's. Have you noticed? Results, reality, roadblocks. What are the things that are stopping you getting there? And they might say, well, we just don't have time. There's no time. We've got this big team, there's no time. Or they might say, well, we're not marketing people. There's nobody dedicated to it. Or they might say, well, we spent all this money and we don't think it was right. And now we're not sure about what we're doing. So now I understand what the roadblock is. So I know where they're headed. I know where they currently are and I know what's stopping them. So then I can say, okay, amazing. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do and how I think we might be able to help. I have lots of benefits of working with me. I have lots of differentiation of working with me. I've figured out that value proposition. So if, for example, the roadblock's time, when I'm telling them about me and what I do, I'll say, so a really important thing that I just want to get across is obviously when you're working with somebody like me, you're going to get a lot more time back because what we do is we do X, Y, Z. So I'm talking to the problem that they've got. If they say our challenges, we've worked with agencies before and we don't think we're getting what we need. Well, let me talk to you about how we're different from other agencies. And here's all the ways we're different. I'm solving the problem for them. So I'm selling into the gap. There's a book actually called Gap Selling. That's a really great book if nobody's read it. But you figured out what the roadblocks are. You figured out where they are currently. You figured out where they want to go. And then you can sell into the gap. Sometimes you won't be the right fit. And you can say, do you know what? It's been amazing chatting to you. I think everything you've told me is really good, but I don't actually have the service that's going to fix that for you. Because what I do is X, Y, Z, and I think what you need is ABC, but I might know someone that does that. Let me go and have a think and I'll come back to you. Because you want to keep that relationship warm. Because at some point they'll remember when we needed something, she found someone for us or she introduced us. And actually I told them what I've done, I do. So they already know when they get there, they might come back. And that happens a lot more than we think. So I think that's quite a nice little roadmap to use when you're having those conversations. And that's something you can do in a DM, right? It can be like, so what's going on with you? Where are you at? What do you need? What's stopping you getting there? It doesn't have to be a phone call, but it's a useful way to get the information you need to be able to sell those benefits in.
I love that. And I think that summarizes so nicely our conversation we were having earlier about the benefits rather than the features. Because you're right, if you went in saying, this is everything about me and my business, if that was me, I'd be like, right. And because I don't necessarily need everything that you're selling or 50% of what you're selling, for example. I think that's such a nice summary there. Right then, so to wrap up, because we have talked about so much, I feel like this has actually been more of a masterclass on marketing than anything else, which is amazing value for anybody listening to this on the podcast or watching over on YouTube there. If there was just one top tip that you would like people to take away from this episode, what would it be?
You have to actually sell if people aren't buying from you.
I love that.
You have to. You have to stop thinking that an Instagram post is sales. You have to stop thinking that, well, I posted a link on my stories once 3 weeks ago and why is no one buying? You have to get consistent and you have to get out of your comfort zone and actually tell people what you have and ask them to buy it. I have this. Would you like it? This is where you can get it. And if you do that and you do that consistently and you do that in a way that's authentic to you, and you do that with the benefits really clear, then when the audience is the right size, they will buy.
I love that. That is such a fantastic takeaway tip. Thank you so much. Before we go though, where can people catch up with you if they want to engage with you a little bit more? And also I believe you've got a freebie as well that we're going to link the link for. I can't talk. Put the link for in the show notes and the description box below. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so you can find me over on Instagram. I'm Jacqui D Patton. I'm sure Verity will put the link in the show notes as well. So that's where I hang out and share tips every day, brand and marketing tips. Go out on there and you can see me in my caftan if you want to join us there. That's where all the fun goes down. And we also have a Facebook group for the greenhouse kind of community. So it's free. We do clinics in there about loads of different stuff every single month. So again, if anyone wants to join that, I'll give you the link for that. But the freebie that I would like to share with you is how to nail the messaging for your business. It walks you through a lot of what we've talked about today, kind of in a bit of a workbook. It's dead easy kind of layout. It's nice and quick. It won't take you a long time. You'll be able to do it with a Jaffa cake and a cup of tea. And it'll help you kind of get a bit of clarity on what it is, what the message you're trying to get across. Because I think if you can make sure that you're clear on how you articulate what you do, it's so much easier to sell. Because if we don't know what we're saying, if we can't express it, then it becomes very difficult to do that. So I'll give you that freebie and you can pop that in as well.
Fantastic. All of those links are going to go in the show notes and the description box if you're watching on YouTube. But Jacqui, thank you so much for joining us today. As I said, this has just been such a jam-packed episode, and I'm sure all of our lovely listeners are just really, really grateful for you to be here. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so grateful that you invited me on. It's been an absolute blast. Thanks, Verity.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Confident CEO podcast. Before you go, I would absolutely be overjoyed if you could take just 2 minutes to leave me a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are a great way to tell Apple Podcasts how much you enjoyed the show, and it helps the algorithm to push out the podcast to more people, thereby helping us to help empower even more badass businesswomen to grow their inner CEO and grow to be the confident CEO of their business that they can be. I love to shout you out in your reviews as well. So you never know, you might be hearing your name on the podcast in the next episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.